Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist in for Phil Sanchez. Congressman Jim Baird says he supports mid-decade redistricting because of shifts in population around the state. The Census Bureau estimates his district has gained about 34,000 people since the 2020 census. All 7 Indiana Republicans in the U.S. House are calling for their districts to be redrawn. Congressman Baird and I also discussed President Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Baird's bill dealing with small modular reactors. And joining us now is Congressman Jim Baird. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
I want to begin with redistricting. You and the other members of the Indiana delegation all have endorsed calling a special session on redistricting. Now, your district borders both the districts that are held by Democrats in this state, those of Frank Mervan and Andre Carson. Are you concerned that redistricting might end up putting you at risk by moving some Democratic voters from their districts into yours?
Well, I feel like that I'm pretty well established here in the state of Indiana, and the counties that I've been to also touch, just like you said, touch those 2 areas or districts. And so I'm very comfortable with the people that we have in West Central Indiana and District 4, and I think we could absorb other members or other voters from the other districts. And so, but you're always interested in where redistricting might go and how it might turn out.
All 7 members of Indiana's Republican congressional delegation released statements endorsing redistricting over the course of a few hours on August 18th. Was that a coordinated effort?
Not with me. No, we did not talk about it. So,
why change the map right before a midterm election?
Well, I think it's important that we make sure that we have people represented in those districts and that they have appropriate representation. And I think President Trump won Indiana the last time very well. And so we want to make sure that we have input from those voters that want to know where the country's headed. So,
what's wrong with the current map, though? Republican leaders at the time said the map was perfect.
Well, I think there's been a lot of migration or people migration, geographical migration since that time. I think it is appropriate to take a look at it and review it and see if we don't make sure that we eliminate any natural boundaries, make sure people have a chance to have input into where the election goes. And I think it's appropriate to have that kind of review. And you know, there's always the opportunity to make sure that some of the natural barriers that occur and may be in these current maps, is there a way to take those out? You know, if we divide a city or a town or someplace right down the middle, it really is nice to keep those communities together so they vote in the same district or same area. So we could look at those kind of things.
But you already redraw the maps every 10 years once the new census data comes out. Why not just wait until the next census?
Because what I just mentioned earlier, I think we've had some people migration into other areas, and want to make sure we still have the appropriate population and that the district represents the appropriate population.
Turning to the federal budget bill, the Health and Hospital Corporation of Marion County says that it's set to lose about $125 million in funding due to a combination of state and federal cuts. They say that will lead to more people seeking emergency room care, which is the most expensive care. Is that worth the cuts to Medicaid?
Well, I think you have to recognize, too, that the big, beautiful bill does have $50 billion set aside even for rural hospitals. And so we were interested in that part or aspect of the big, beautiful bill, and we're certainly interested in making sure that people have health care. And the other thing that I think is important is that we also took into consideration individuals that weren't qualified or that the state was making inappropriate or erroneous payments to some people. And so if we pull those funds back, it'll make more funds available for those people that really need it.
So what do you say then, particularly to the rural hospitals, they're concerned about losing Medicaid payments as a result of that?
And that's what I said, the $50 billion, that's why we put that in there, was to make sure we have something to back up any of those concerns that they have. And when we find out what those are for sure, and what they need, well, we have those funds. The other thing because we've been looking for waste, fraud, and abuse in the systems, in all of the areas, in Medicaid, the SNAP program, all of that. And so if we have those funds and can keep those from being erroneously paid or made, then we have the funds that we need to do what we need to do. But the other thing too is the economy. A lot of things in this big beautiful bill really encourage the economy, and one of those things is energy. So if we can renew our onshore oil drilling and energy supplies, that's going to help reduce interest expense, because the cost of transportation ends up being incorporated into the price of products and consumer goods. And so the improvement in the economy, to me, and the improvement in energy really helps boost the economy, give more people to share the load of any of those programs like we're talking about, whether it's Medicaid or SNAP or whatever.
We haven't seen any further progress toward peace in Ukraine since President Trump's summit with Vladimir Putin earlier this month. Did we get anything meaningful out of that summit, or did he end up just giving Putin the photo op he wanted?
Well, I think the president is really interested in peace, and he's interested in peace through strength, and that's why he's using the tariffs to bring people to the table so we can negotiate more fair trade agreements. But when you get down to I think he's very frustrated with what's going on in Ukraine. You have to keep in mind too that Putin was the one that attacked Ukraine, and the Ukrainians, you got to admire their courage and strength for putting up with this, over 3 years, and they've been able to withstand that. They've been very resourceful. So I think that they deserve the kind of support that they need in order to keep their country sovereign.
What should President Trump's next steps be regarding the war in Ukraine?
Well, he's never going to give up on the idea of trying to get them together. But as far as revealing where his next steps are, I think that probably comes from him, and he does a good job of that. And so I think he's going to want to try to keep getting them together because he wants peace. I mean, when you think about the number of people that have been killed, including women and children, then he's certainly right to want to encourage peace, and I encourage that too.
Before we go, you have a bill involving small modular reactors. Tell me a little about that.
You bet. We're having a demand on our energy and our grid system because these data centers require significant amounts of energy, and it's going to be difficult to try to build and reinforce the grid sufficiently to handle that load. These SMRs, which are small modular reactors, have the capability to maybe take some of the pressure off of that system by locating them in strategic regions. And they're just small modular reactors. And we have Purdue University right here with the engineering background and capability to really enhance that program. So I looked at it as a supplement. The other thing that I think has happened is I think we're more receptive because we have such a demand for energy with the data centers I just mentioned. So that's going to help influence and encourage the use of small modular reactors.
Congressman Jim Baird, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, Carmel officials reveal how much money they'll lose next year, how it's connected to changes in state property taxes. Welcome back. Schools and city services in Carmel will lose millions of dollars in tax revenue next year. That's according to a briefing city officials provided. This all stems from the property tax overhaul state lawmakers approved this spring. The superintendent of Carmel Clay Schools says his school will lose nearly $3 million in revenue next year. He says that means their operating fund won't go up at all. That fund covers expenses such as buses and non-teaching staff.
As utility costs rise, as we want to provide a respectable salary increase and benefit increase for our employees, it's going to be more and more challenging for school districts to do that.
Ostrike says the school system might have to cut some programming. He says state law limits schools' ability to transfer money from one fund to another.
We also have new graduation requirements around career tech ed and around the different work-based learning programs. However, with SEA 1, it is going to be more challenging to maintain these phenomenal opportunities for our students.
Carmel Mayor Sue Finkham says homeowners at least will see a little less tax burden, though a local income tax hike might offset that. The city's finances will take a hit, though. By 2030, Carmel could be short about $38 million in property tax revenue, and total expenses could exceed total revenue by about $15 million. Finkham says that could jeopardize plans for a new fire station or renovations to city buildings.
We have to find new ways of doing business, new ways of getting the work done, new ways to serve our community to come under that blue line with that orange line. Luckily, we've got great city employees, great leadership here at the city of Carmel with our elected leaders and our hired leaders and our amazing teams who can work hard and make this happen.
Both Finkham and Oestreich say it's still too soon to say exactly which services they'll need to cut. And this is not the last we'll hear on property taxes. State lawmakers have floated the idea of further changes in future sessions. Coming up, Indiana's best political team assesses the redistricting fight and those property tax revenue numbers. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Dana Black and Republican Allie Bartlett. Ladies, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the White House meeting between State House Republicans and the Trump administration officials. Allie, some Republican lawmakers who had earlier said they oppose redistricting now say they support it or at least are open to it. What happened?
Look, I think, redistricting is always a tough conversation, whether it's, at the 10-year mark with the census or if it's a mid-decade redistricting. I think they had the opportunity to learn from folks at the White House about why they support this measure. I think it's going to be an ongoing learning process. They're considering all the aspects of a difficult topic and a difficult decision to make. And I think that's why we're going to see some people go back and forth a little bit or change their mind. I think that's what happens when you learn facts and you learn about a situation. And so we'll see what transpires, but that's why I think we've seen some of the back and forth.
Dana, Republicans keep pointing to Democrats, and did California Governor Gavin Newsom's decision to call his own retaliatory special session end up giving some political cover to Republicans in other states?
No. And honestly, what the Republicans from Indiana learned was that if you go against Trump, if you go against this administration, we will have you. We have a bunch of elected Republicans in our state who have zero spines. They need to remember that they actually work for Hoosiers and not the White House. So what they learned is, if you don't get down with this, we are coming for you. You will retaliate. He's the president of retribution. So they don't want that smoke. So they are going to go with whatever the Trump administration wants, whether voters in Indiana want it or not, and we have heard from them say that they don't want it. And what Gavin Newsom did was literally in retaliation to what happened in Texas. When President Trump says, I need you to redistrict so I can get 5 more seats. Well, I tell you what, why don't you run on your record? Run on the things that you passed, because you know that big ugly bill is abhorrent, and people are finding out that they're going to lose their Medicaid, lose their Medicare, and their Social Security, and that bill is not good for Americans, and they don't want to run on that.
Allie, I'm going to come back to you on this one. Lawmakers tell me they spent only a few minutes discussing redistricting. They spent more time on a lot of other issues. Still, though, how likely is it at this point that we see a special session on redistricting?
I'm glad that you asked about the Gavin Newsom question, because my answer is the complete opposite of what Dana said. I think we have seen for years and years that Democratic states are redistricting all the time for political purposes, and Gavin Newsom's comments prove that to us. I mean, he has come out and outright said, we are going to fight fire with fire. We're going to redistrict to offset what Texas is doing. We're seeing Illinois do the same thing. I encourage all the viewers, everybody out there, go look at Illinois' congressional maps. The way those are gerrymandered speaks for themselves. I mean, we as a party have fallen behind in this political back and forth on redistricting. And so if we're talking about it in that sense, absolutely, we have an obligation to at least look at what our maps look like. You heard Congressman Baird talk about, a change in population. 10 years is a long time, especially when you've gone through a global pandemic. We talked about, the influx of Hoosiers into the state during the pandemic. But bigger than that, we have every right legally to take a look at what our population looks like, at redrawing their maps. There is nothing in Indiana's Constitution or otherwise that legally prohibits us from looking at this as an option. So you asked about the likelihood of the outcome. I think that, while they didn't go to DC and spend hours talking about this, that wasn't the point of the trip. I think that they're learning all the time. They're taking the time to just take a look at what is going to be best and most representative for the Hoosier state. And, Gavin Newsom's comments, Governor Pritzker's comments, yes, those are all considerations, and that's what we're going to look at.
Look at California. They actually passed on a referendum to have a nonpartisan redistricting commission to make sure that their maps and their districts are done well and fairly. So you can't even really say that. Now, I will say gerrymandering is something that both parties do. We're not going to pretend like that's not a thing, but it usually happens at every 10 years after we do the census. To say, excuse me, American taxpayers, Hoosier taxpayers, could you go ahead and pay for a mid-decade census so we can steal some votes or we can disenfranchise voters? Mike Braun only received 54% of the votes in the state. So do the other 40-some% of Hoosiers not deserve any representation in Washington? Because that's what Republicans are saying. Are you trying to say that it's okay to disenfranchise black and brown communities? Because they want to slice up Marion County. They want to slice up District 1, where the greatest concentration of population of people of color. And that's exactly what they want to do.
Even if we redistrict, we still have to meet all of the constitutional thresholds for representation. If and when a redistricting goes to court, we have to uphold those constitutional standards time and time again. There is no way that maps can be redrawn so that people do not have that constitutional right to representation. So let me remind you on that. And everything you said, so it's okay for Gavin Newsom?
Is it okay for Texas?
Is it okay for?
I mean, because
I do want to move on to some local issues here. I want to move on to what we just heard from Carmel city officials about property taxes. So, Dan, let's go back to you here. Let's talk about those taxes. So, how likely is it that? First off, how likely is it that we see further changes to the property tax regimen in the state? And then, I mean, do these local districts have any options here?
I tell you what, these Republicans are on a roll. I mean, they are doing everything so splendidly in this administration. Republican and Democratic mayors and administrators and city administrators all over the state begged them during the general session and told them exactly what was going to happen with SB 1. Nobody listened. They went on ahead and pushed forward. In fact, the governor said, you need to learn to do more with less while I build my helipad at my crib, right? Well, I'm building an ability to fly helicopters in and out of my house. Y'all do more with less. The priorities are all wrong. We want to go ahead and defund municipalities, but we're literally defunding the police. We want to defund public education. And if Carmel Clay, the highest revenue generating county in the state of Indiana, is saying we're going to have a shortfall, then what does it say about some of our poor counties? What does it say about places like Indianapolis or Greene County or places where there's only 8,000 or 9,000 people where they are not generating revenue? Y'all, they are coming for your communities. They do not care about what you need.
Allie, I want to let you weigh in on this as well, but also, if cities and schools begin cutting services, might lawmakers shy away from further changes to property taxes?
So I think this is always going to be an ongoing learning process first and foremost, but let us also remember that Senate Bill 1 only went into effect a month ago in July. And so we have actually not seen the effects of Senate Bill 1 necessarily at this point. I think there is going to be an adjustment period, and that's what mayors are working through right now in counties. People are going to have to readjust and re-examine their budgets, and that's what's happening. We're tightening the belt. We're going to see what the outcomes are, and I think that's just going to have to be the reality of it moving forward.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Allie and Dana, thank you both so much for coming in, and we will be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. And be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.